All right, everyone. So I know that a lot of you had some questions after the last session, and that some of you went to office hours and all of that. And we posted and everything. We wanted to make sure that everyone kind of like knew and understood that we knew that this was a lot to throw to everyone at once, but we're kind of our thought is that we found that whenever we're building actual useful programs, that students tend to engage better. And we just kind of reached this point where to really build more interesting programs that we needed to do more, and to do more we had to introduce a lot more concepts. So, but the good news is that we really are only going to reiterate the same concepts that we've learned. So, this last week or on Saturday, we were introduced to a ton of new concepts, but we're just going to reuse those same concepts to actually build something. And that's kind of what we're going to do today with the Midway Challenge. So those of you, if you took the time to read one of the Midway challenges and take a stab at it, then good for you. That's exactly what we wanted. Again, it's going to feel like stumbling around and really difficult, but that's okay. That's what we wanted. That's what we wanted for, for this pass or whatever. So now what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of help you along, kind of get a little bit further with building, particularly this browser challenge. So it seems like a lot of people are confused as with respect to the node stuff versus the browser stuff, because we started you off with HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript one in the browser, right? But then we switched to the node stuff for this module. What I'm going to do in this class is I'm going to kind of start on this browser challenge, and I'm going to do all the stuff that I introduced in last week's class, with fetch and JSON and all that. But I'm going to do that in a browser context, and so maybe it might make a little bit more sense. So you can kind of compare and contrast. So that's what we're gonna do today. So I have I had created, just as a way of getting started, this node Midway. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to, I won't even use the terminal. I'll just do this. I'm quicker with the terminal, but we can just do it this way. It's fine. What I want to do is I want to find my home, which what I do on Mac is I go to downloads and then do command up, and I think it goes up to Devin Mobley, but you can probably find it a different way. But yeah, so I just want to make a new folder. So I'm going to go to OK Coders. I'm going to do, so I'm going to call mine. No, this is not what. Let's see, what do I want to put this? Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just do that here. That's fine. So we'll do new folder. And we'll call this browser Midway. But I'm going to put that into dev OK Coders. And then I'm just going to open that up in VS Code. Oh, okay. Okay, so can anyone tell me, if I'm wanting to create a brand new HTML document, what I need to do?
Click the little, oh yeah, go back to that, and then under browser Midway, add the little, yeah, right there, click that.
Okay, and then what am I going to call it? What is my extension on this?
HTML.
That's right. So then I can just do, actually, no, I can do, you know, something like this, and then have a head, and then have a body. What's that screaming
You have to do doc type HTML above that,
at?
don't you? Or no?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that's just like best practice because it structures the document better. But yeah, I was interested in what this is. This is actually a different thing. This is for accessibility. So like
Oh, okay.
creating things that are accessible. So I mean, I should just be able to be like, you know, this, and then you know, I could open that like that. I mean, you can always go to the, I'm gonna make this bigger, and we like, you can just open up an HTML file, you know, and it's going to do that. So okay, so then what I'm going to do is, you know, I want to be able to create or to do JavaScript in here, and what I'm going to do is I want to, from right off the bat, I'm going to want to do JavaScript in a separate JavaScript file, so not in a script tag here. Oops. So not in a tag inside the HTML. So I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, do something like this. So then, do you all remember how I import that into this script, into the HTML document?
You create a script tag with the source being the link to that page.
Exactly right. And, you know, I can do, you know, oops. So I can test that by just saying like alert, I got here. Refreshing that, I got there, and loaded, boom, hello world. Cool. So we're rocking and rolling here. So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to make it to where, so where we're going is we're going to do this, the browser midway. Cool thing about GitHub, if you do Command K, you can do, or Control K, let's see, module. Oh, that didn't work. Oh well. So then the midway challenge. So the idea here is create a front end that is at least the following, and you can do whatever you want. So you can pull the weather for the current day, you can show the temperature, you can show the wind, show cloud coverage, show precipitation, all that kind of stuff. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a button that's going to initiate us pulling this data and it refreshing it on the page. And the only thing we're going to do is we're going to just spit out the raw JSON. So there's a tag. I think it's a code tag in HTML or something like that. Show JSON tag HTML. I think it's a code tag. Oh, pre-tag. Pre-tag should work fine. Pre-tag will kind of like make it look a little bit like this. Yeah, like that. So that it'll just show the JSON inside of that. So we want to have a button here, and we just want to pull, and we just want to spit it out. And every time we hit that button, it'll regenerate it and pull it in. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here with just a button. It's going to say get weather data. Okay. We're going to do an ID button. Let's get weather data. And that should be good there. So then boom. Cool. So that's there. What we're going to do is instead of having it just alert on this to make sure that we have our event handler working well, we're going to do something like get weather data button. And that's equal to document dot. What is the, which one of these is the one that we need?
Get element by ID.
That's right. So that's going to be the get weather data. I think that's what I had. Let's just split these. Boom. Get weather data. Okay, cool. I hate this thing. Okay, so we have this. We want to get that, and then we want to get weather data button dot add event listener. And we want that event listener to be on click, and we're going to do a function. We could do a function keyword here, or we could do a an anonymous function or an arrow function like this. And we can just say still got here. So let's see if this works. So we're going to refresh this, and then that does not work. What am I doing wrong? Oh, it's no. Well, this makes sense. Okay. Let's do this. We could put this in the footer. What we're going to do, though, is I want to show you why this is the case. So let's see. Okay, so it's trying to attach, it's loading, and then it's trying to attach this method, which is the add event listener, to this, but unfortunately it is null. So, I could say something like, if get weather button, then add it in order to avoid the error. What this is saying is if this is a truthy value, so in other words, not null, then go ahead and attach it. Otherwise, it throws this JavaScript error and it makes a JavaScript break. So, but then what's going to happen here is it's going to say loading and loaded, but then I'm going to hit this and nothing's going to happen. But that's because if I put something here, this is kind of like how you might debug a program. So I'm just kind of showing this a little bit. The button is not null. Okay. So I'm refreshing this and we're not seeing that. So can anyone tell me what's happening here? Does anyone have any hypothesis as to what's happening here?
Is the script running before it reads your HTML file fully?
That's exactly right. So in other words, you're saying your hypothesis is that this is trying to get this element, but this element doesn't exist because it's loading it up here as opposed to right there. Is that what your hypothesis is?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, so let's just see if this works here. So that means that it would do it in order. Huh. So you're exactly right. So now we have this and we still got there. Okay. So yeah, so you're exactly right. This is how we would be able to enforce the order of something. If we were to do this purely based on just kind of the order of how we know the document is loading. But the problem is that sometimes in some situations, it may be a situation where you can't control this. And so this is another one of those spots. So, last week I talked a lot about how JavaScript is asynchronous, and we're given a lot of tools in the APIs within JavaScript that show us that allow us to work with JavaScript in a way where we don't have to know the order of things all the time. One of those being like events, like for instance, an event listener, I don't know when my user is going to click on that. So what I'm doing is I'm attaching a function that gets fired when that click happens. So similarly, there's a couple of functions that allow you to do this from the Windows side. Or from the document side. So, remember that in the browser, we have two special objects, window and document. And there's a special event. So if we go document events, JavaScript, there's all sorts of events down here. There's UI event, there's animation event, all this kind of stuff. There's a mouse event, drag event. There's all sorts of events that get tracked by the browser. But the one that I want to bring to your attention is this load event. So the load, if we go to this is execute a JavaScript immediately after a page has been loaded. Okay, great. So now we can do onload. This is an onload event handler here, which is the same as doing this syntax or this syntax. So you can do that. You can do it either way. So because we're working in JavaScript and not the HTML, we can go ahead and use it like either .onload equals or add the event listener like this. I prefer this syntax, so that's what I use, but they are functionally the same. So, all of these events have an equivalent in this, like on whatever syntax, on click, on press, on load, whatever. But we're just going to stick to add event listener. The event listener name is just whatever this name is, and then we can attach a function to that. So if I were to just wrap all of this in document.onload, or in my preferred way, add event listener, which we can do onload. It's not a problem to do it that way. We can do an arrow function and then say, put all this stuff in here like this. And we can even do something like function attach get weather data button listener. I'm being very, very, very verbose with these names, and I think that that's a good practice, but it may be slightly overkill. But what I'm just going to suggest is I can just do this, right? So let's see if that works. It doesn't look like it's working. I wonder why. So let's just console.log and we'll say loaded. So that's not getting fired. Okay. Someone playing some music? Cool. So yeah, window.onload. I did document.onload, I guess, which is not a event handler, or either that I'm using it the wrong way possibly, but we can do window.onload, and you can see that we have the loaded. So that means that got there, and then now we're loading that. And so, okay, great. So now, then whenever I press this, it should have this still got here. Perfect. Okay, fantastic. Is everyone following what's going on so far? Does it seem pretty familiar? We kind of did a lot of this in the sort of HTML and JavaScript one using the document, but I just want to make sure everyone is kind of recalling how all this works and following along here.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any questions, any issues? Please just speak up and let us know. I'm trying to get more information out there while we build this, but again, you need to ask questions and you need to be following along and also doing exercises that doing exercises along in your own time where all this is going to be familiar. You know, we're working with functions, we're working with the document, we're working with conditionals, we're working with arrow functions in this case, all of that. So if this is not kind of coming back to you some way, that's fine. You don't have to be a master at it. I'm not asking you to be a master at it so far. Just know that this is more or less what we've covered already. This may look a little bit different. The way I write code is going to look different than the way Zach writes code, and the examples may be different, but I'm just trying to do it the way that I would do it. And I want you to follow along, and I want you to be able to try it yourself based on the couple of examples you have, some of the stuff from the second module and this class for you to work on. So yeah. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to, when we push this button, we want that to make an API call, and we want that API call to retrieve weather API data. And then where we're going from there is we're going to then put it in a pre-tag. Okay. So what does that mean here? Well, that means that I'm going to need to put my fetch call here. Okay. Now, how do I? Well, okay. Let me go through this process too. So in order to make this fetch call, what am I going to need? Well, in order to know that, I'm going to have to go to the docs here, okay? And essentially, you usually need two things. You need the URL endpoint, and then you need, some way to authenticate to it, right? That's typically what you need for an API because it's data. So we go to, like, usually there's like getting started. Okay, you need to sign up. Okay, I do need to do that. I can do that real quick. I'll just do this. I'm just gonna generate a password here. No, I'll just do this. I'm not a robot. I have, okay. Account verification, cool. Do these steps look familiar, or who has not tried to sign up for either this one or the other account, dummy API account or weather API account? Did anyone have any issues, or was it smooth sailing for everyone? I'm going to take that as a smooth sailing. So let's just do that there. So I want to log in because I want to go to my account page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my API key right here. This is my authentication. This is their API is going to receive this information, and it's going to say, oh, now I know that this is devin.mobley@gmail.com, right? So I can copy that. Nope, didn't look like it copied there. And then now I go back to here and I want to look, how do I actually send this? Okay, API access to the data is protected by an API key. If at any time you find your API key has become vulnerable, please regenerate the key using your generate button. Okay. That's usually a one-time thing, meaning if you lost it or you feel like it's compromised, you can regenerate it, but then you have to go replace it in all your code. Authentication is provided by passing your API key as a request parameter through an API. Okay, fantastic. So it's going to be through a request parameter. And then the request can be to any number of these. So you're going to have an anatomy of a URL here. It's going to be base URL, which is usually HTTP plus domain plus API version optional. So example is, which I am going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a constant here. And that's going to be a string. So base URL, and then so in that case, it's going to be HTTP API weather API v1. Okay. Then you're going to have your resources. And then like we might have something like orders, like slash orders. We might have slash customer with an ID of 5. So that gets our customer with the ID of 5. Or we have something like, in this case, it's going to be like current.json. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that outside of the base URL, so subdomain plus domain. So API here is a subdomain. If that makes sense. API, HTTP API is subdomain weatherapi.com. That's the root domain, and then slash v1. That's just the prefix saying this is the API version. then you have like something like slash resources or something like that. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to just construct this as a string, which is the way that you can do that, here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, so I want, let's say current.json, okay? And actually, let's do forecast.json just for funsies. So I'm going to do a fetch. I'm going to do forecast.json. I'm going to, this is going to be the full. So then my base URL constructed of subdomain, domain, and my prefix plus the endpoint that I want, which in this case is the forecast.json, which that's just what the docs tell me it is. So that's the reason I'm following it. And then what I want to do is I need to do a key. So what we're going to end up constructing is something like this. So I have, my API key, and then at the end of our URL, you have something like this. You have an and sign. Then you have the parameter name. In this case, it's key. And then you have equals the value of the key. Sorry, I said and sign. What I meant is the question mark sign. So that's the query. So you're saying, here's my query parameters, which is why it's a question mark. And then if you have other ones, then you can do and then like in this case, this has Q, days, DT, just a lot of these different optional parameters, but I could do something like Q equals, it looks like I need, let's just see if OKC works. So that's my query there. I could also do, it looks like I could do 73008, which is a house that I own. It's in that zip code. And then the forecast requires days. So what I'm going to do is days equals, let's just say 5. So this is what my goal is. And I can construct this as a string and just pass this as, something like this, right? So I'm saying I'm putting all this here, and then I am adding on to this query to the URL using query parameters, question mark, key equals API key, and Q equals 73008, and days equals 5. So that's telling it, this is me, devin.mobile@gmail.com. This is where I want to receive the weather data, and this is how many days of weather data I want. And I know all this primarily just because of the docs, right? So boom, let's just see what's going on here. So what, if you remember, fetch returns a special type of object in JavaScript. Does anyone remember what that special object is called?
Is it the JSON file thing?
No, that's not what I'm looking for. This API endpoint does return JSON data, but the fetch will return a response. But remember how it's asynchronous, and so we have this special object to work with asynchronous code. And so there's something special I have to do here that I can only do on this special type of object. You remember from the example, the fetch example on MDN? Can anyone tell me what it says?
You did the .then, is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So .then can only be done on a special type of object. And what do you remember what that's called? There, you can also use this to quote unquote unwrap this particular object. What is it? Someone tell me.
A promise.
Promise.
That's right. Okay, that reformatted that. I apologize. I'm gonna do. So okay, so one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this look cleaner. I'm going to take this out and just say const forecast endpoint, something like that. And then I can just say fetch forecast endpoint. And then dot then. Okay, so remember with fetch, I have to do 2 dot thens. Does anyone remember what the first one is? So the first one is going to return not a special type of object, but an object that we can call response, because that's what's going to be the response of this. But then response has a method on it that allows me to get the data, like the resulting data from this response. And it returns a promise, which is why I have to do a second dot then. But does anyone remember what it is?
.json.
That's right. So I'm getting the JSON data, so it's response.json method. And then that'll actually give me the data. So let's just see if I get any data. Interesting. Look at that. I have an object. That object has a current key, it has a forecast key, and it has a location key. And then it has forecast day. It has oh, it has some astronomy stuff. That's interesting. Man, this is cool. I'm getting a ton of awesome data in this. This is the date in at epoch time, which is like the second since January 1st, 1970, I think. Location, Bethany, Oklahoma. That's exactly right. That's where the zip code came from. Okay. Very cool. Okay. So very good. So we have dot data. Now, one thing I did want to point out is we have these dot thens, but we don't have anything, something really, really important in programming and in JavaScript is this idea of error handling. So what happens whenever something goes wrong and what we do about it. So let's say that I were to take off this required parameter, which is days, and I were to just do that. Let's see what happens whenever I do this. Okay, that's looks like that's fine. Let's take off another one. Okay, so this is coming back with a different, and it's an error. Parameter Q is missing. Okay, and then, you know, let's say that I were to let's say that I were to do something like call the wrong method here. What that would do? Foo, response.foo. Okay. So I want to put this out because you'll see this sometimes a lot. You'll see this uncaught in promise, and there'll be sometimes be like warnings about how it's deprecated and all that kind of stuff. So essentially, all this is saying is this is not a function, but that happened inside of a promise. It happened inside of a context, an asynchronous process. And so it ended up just throwing an uncaught in promise error. So uncaught errors are a bad thing, generally speaking. So whenever we're doing a async await, so like let's say that we were to do like you know, await response equals fetch, and then do await data equals res response dot JSON, like do it this way. What we can do is we can use a JavaScript concept, which is a try catch block. And what's going to happen is I can then like handle this error. Just by logging it or something like that. Okay. So this is how you might do it, like with async await. What we're going to focus on is how to do it with dot thens, because that's what we're focused on. Luckily, the promises allow us to get they have a second option. Like you can do a dot then if there's a promise on here. But at the end of your promise chain, so at the very, very last promise, which in this case is this, because this does not return a promise, you can do a dot catch, and it's gonna send you the error. And then I can do something like that. So what I want to point out to you is this. Notice how this says error in fetch now. Now what happens whenever I take the catch off? Remember what it says? It says that it's uncaught now. So what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have happen an error like this, break all of your JavaScript in the rest of the file. So to create a safe program, we need to be able to catch. And that's what this is doing. So I'm essentially logging the same error, but this is a JavaScript error that's being logged, and this is why it's red. But then whenever I put the catch in, it just logs the error. And that's what this is, like a stack trace. This is why this looks that way. This is what error objects look like when you console.log them, and that's fine. There's a different way that, we can get information from this error more readily if we just did something like give me, I think that there's a couple of properties on errors, but like name or message. Yeah, so this just gives us the, so I had to yell at them. And now what's happening is that this is safe. I can log this, I can give information to a developer if they're troubleshooting it, but now I don't have to worry about it breaking all my JavaScript, right? So I just wanted to point that out, that like it is always good practice, especially whenever you're working with this for the first time, to like end your chain of promises. A lot of times it'll just be one dot then like this, but in our case with fetch, you have to do two. And then this will be the last thing. This will be where you process your information, or do something with the data. But then this catch is there just in case something happens, and you can there's an issue. There's not an issue. So cool. So what I'm going to do is continue to query for 73008. And then what I want to do is I want to just, for simplicity, so because this is so nested, like this is a function inside of a promise, which is inside of another function, which is inside of another function, which is inside of an if statement, blah, blah, blah. So to make it more simple, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put what I want to do with the data into a function, and I can name that function whatever I want, right? So I can say, let's say I want to add data to pre-tag, and I can just pass the data right there. So then I need a function that's like add data to pre-tag. I can then do sort of what I want with this. So this is going to receive a data property, and what I can do is I can do one of two things. I can either create a pre-tag here and add it to it, or I can construct one here and then inject it into the document. For simplicity, I'm just going to create this here. So we have the button, we have the pre-tag. And I want that to be data results. And I think what I can do is do something very, very similar to what I did here, but I can do const results pre-tag equals document dot get element by ID, data results. And then I believe the inner text maybe can be data. Okay, so then I'm going to, yep, so response.foo. So I need to put that back to JSON, save that. And I'm getting a, oh, I constructed this wrongly. So this is going to be an and. Okay, so I'm getting this object. Can anyone tell me what's going on here? Does anyone have any theories on why this says object?
I don't know exactly why, but it was doing it to me earlier, and this makes me feel validated a little.
You should feel validated. This is the fact that you got this far is really, really great. And this is something that you do tend to see really, really often. Like, so for instance, this is something I used to do quite a bit. So like, let's say I was troubleshooting something and I wanted it instead of console.log. So I can console.log the data here, right? And I'm going to get the data like in this form that I had gotten it back from fetch. But like, let's say that I wanted to alert the data. It's also going to say object.object. But this is what console.log is showing me. And then object.objects, that's what it's going to put here. Any theories on why that might be the case? I'll give you a quick hint. We'll just do data and then we'll concatenate. Remember our old friend for checking types? So it says object here, it says object there. It says object there. Okay. What is, whenever I hover over this, whenever I look at the documentation, what is inner text expecting?
String.
That's right. So if it's expecting a string, and let's just assume, we can maybe reasonably assume that alert is also expecting a string. And console.log is expecting any data, then does that help us any? What is that? What do you think that means?
Does it need to be like stringify or to string?
That's a really great point. Let's just get rid of the alert and the type of stuff, and let's just try it. So JSON dot stringify. Okay. Now we have this wonderful string here that's in a pre-tag. It's formatting this the way that I would expect it to. And I think I want to say that we can find I think that we can find a way to make this actually formatted for us. It's pre-formatted. Formatted JSON tag HTML. Let's see. This was what I was on earlier. Ah, okay, yeah, I forgot about this. So Stringify has two optional properties, and so you can just add the null for the middle one because it's a null, and then 2. And I think what that's going to do is it's going to create it to be, yeah, so it's going to be a space of 2 here. And if I did space 4, I think, yeah, this is a space 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it indents it by a space of 4. This is a tabs or spaces argument. Just do 2. Just do 2. No one cares. No one cares about your opinion on spaces versus tabs. So now we have this little button that gives us some data, and it puts that data here. And we can even make this slightly more simple. We can go to the forecast day, yeah, and spit that out as an array. This is our location, all that kind of stuff. So, okay, so we kind of went through a lot there, and I think that the next step would be, okay, how do I want to display this data? I probably don't want to display, just JSON, raw JSON. Like there's different ways of kind of being able to work with it and make it look better. So that's kind of where we're going is, okay, now how do I take this data and make it look better kind of in this front end? But with what we covered today with kind of the fetch stuff and doing this in the browser, are there any questions? And my question to you would be, does this help piece together some of the stuff we talked about with the node stuff, or do you like the browser better? Is there still some confusion? Or how did it feel coming back to the browser context?
I like the browser.
Yeah, why is that?
It's just, to me, it's just more immediate. Like, I mean, in some ways I'm more of a visual person, so it's a little easier for me to cope with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we don't have to jack with the command line or anything like that. So any other opinions on browser versus node, or working with this in the browser, or confusion on the code that we wrote perhaps? Nothing. Okay. Okay, well, so something you might do, this is just me, but something you might be able to do is I can write it kind of using functions that don't exist yet, but this is very common for me. Like if it's like, okay, I know where I'm going and I just haven't written some of the code, like writing function names and stuff like that, like can help kind of decompose the problem. So like, let's say that I wanted to add to the pre-tag, but I wanted it to do it in a way that was like, or I could add it to any tag. I could add, add to unordered list. Remember what an unordered list is? It's the UL tag, yeah. And that has a list of things that you could do. But that could see, const days is an object where I'm gonna do, like get forecast by day. And that might look something like 2022 05/18, and that equals your forecast object or something. I forgot what it actually looks like. Forecast day. Yeah, so we could just say like max temp Fahrenheit, right? So this might be like max temp, and this has some number, 89 degrees, and then you can get 2022 05/19, and then that might also have a max temp for that day, or sunrise, or whatever it is you want from here. But then you can spit that out into an unordered list here, or something along those lines. So then what would it look like to create a function that you can take that data and format it to something like this, as an example, and then add it to an ordered list where it's like, here's the day, here's the temp, here's the next day, and that temp, here's, whatever you want. That's what the point of this midway exercise is. The sky's your limit, and you can kind of do it however you want to. So, yeah, makes sense. Any other questions, issues? Let me check this real quick. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I didn't see these during my, I get kind of focused on this, and I'm only listening. And there might have been some chat questions too. I apologize for that. But yeah, cool. Well, this is all we're kind of doing. Like we're kind of just doubling down on these on fetch, and on some of the stuff we learned in JavaScript 2, creating more functions and creating more interesting programs. So please work on this stuff. I do want to make one quick announcement. Okay, we'll post about this. We will not be in person on this Saturday. Okay. Zach will be teaching, but he will be teaching remotely. I'll be out of town, and that's just true for this Saturday. From there we'll take it step by step. So we'll tell you what next week's plan is that time, but just know for now, Saturday will be not in person, so it'll be just virtual on Saturday. And remember to hit us up, come to office hours next week. Definitely make sure to attend Saturday's class and continue to work on the curriculum and the practice algorithms, the practice problems on the curriculum README. You need to be working through these things as we're doing that. Otherwise, none of these concepts are going to click. Put in some of the work and you'll get a lot out of it. I promise. Okay. Cool. I will add this to the curriculum. I will upload the video as soon as I can. I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to also stop recording.